Independence Day. Get to Nissan now and save on the lineup with intelligent safety features and America's best truck warranty. Take on the everyday with 6 2017 IIHS top safety picks. It's clear why we're America's fastest growing auto brand. Now get President's Day offers like 0% financing for up to 72 months on 11 models, or save up to $45.50 on select models.
We're going to increase military spending. We're spending more. Now, to put it into context, we're going to spend about $600 billion on the military, and we spend more than nearly every country on the planet. And yet, somehow, our military, depleted. It's sad. We need to rebuild it. I mean, it's the same thing with all regular Republicans. Let's rebuild the military. Let's put more military spending. Let's put more money into the pockets of the defense contractors so we can drop more bombs on brown people. You know this is where we're coming to, right? You don't just build up a military this size and not use it. And I'll get to that in a little bit. Yet, the question should be, of course, well, how do we pay for it? How do we pay for it? I mean, we never ask, how do we pay for more military spending? No. We only ask, how do we pay for things like healthcare for Americans and education for Americans? We always ask that. Whoa. How do we pay to take care of our own people? But hey, bombing brown people? Yeah, we don't care how much that costs. Well, actually, they did answer this question. Basically, they want to pay for this by cutting everything else. The administration said that most other discretionary spending programs would be cut by that same amount, by 10%, to pay for this. Now, there are some officials that singled out foreign aid. Now, foreign aid is actually one of the smallest parts of the federal budget. Now, they said, quote, it would face large reductions in how much we spend. Now, how much do we spend relative to the federal budget? 1%. That is 1% of the federal budget. Great. Now, that is roughly around $40 billion, give or take a few. Now, let me tell you where that goes and why that will never happen. Roughly, again, $40 billion, the top two countries that receive this foreign aid, Israel and Egypt. Israel. Now, why do we give money to Egypt, you might be asking? Well, Egypt, state sponsors of terror. Why are we giving them money? Well, why do we give money to Egypt? It's because we made a deal with them to give them aid so that they could remain friendly towards Israel. So essentially, most of our foreign aid, including military aid, goes to supporting Israel or keeping the area around Israel more peaceful by essentially giving them money for their militaries. So all of it has to do with our fixation on Israel. You think we're going to get rid of that? Hell no. It's not just Democrats that love Israel. It's also Republicans that love the shit out of Israel. They're not going to get rid of that aid. Maybe some of it, maybe they can trim some of it to go to countries that are not Israel. But again, that's where most of our money goes to. You know, I think that Israel, I believe Israel has a right to exist just as much as any other country. But why are we continuing to give them money? Why are we continuing to give them the Iron Dome, weapons? They don't need it. That's one country that can actually provide health care for its own people. Why are we continuing to give them so much money? I understood giving it before when they were a newly established nation. But now, we're just subsidizing another country. And it's not even that much compared to our federal budget. But at the same time, okay, if you want to target that, as the Trump administration says it does, foreign aid, well then you would have to cut money from Israel. And there are a lot of politicians that is absolutely a no-go zone. You can't do that. You can't touch that money for Israel. So, that's why it's never going to happen. So this whole thing is just one big giant oops. So, again. Now, in a statement at the White House on Monday, Trump said that his budget would put America first by focusing on defense, law enforcement, and veterans, using money previously, of course, spent abroad. So, again, they're saying, well, let's take that foreign aid money and spend it on more cops and more defense. And again, that's roughly $4 billion or $40 billion in 1% of the total budget. That alone will not pay for the expansion of the military alone. So obviously, again, they're going to have to cut everything else. He says, Trump says, we're going to do more with less and make the government lean and accountable to the people. We can do so much more with the money that we spend. And again, the question is how? How? Especially since we're now, according to Trump, going to be spending more money on shit we don't need. And of course, the tax question, well, that comes later. As the whole plan for Trump and the Republicans is to massively cut corporate taxes and taxes for the wealthy. This is going to be a disaster. Look, here's the thing. We don't need more tanks. We don't need more ships. We don't need more planes. We don't. Right-wingers want them because, hey, it makes them feel safe. It makes them feel strong. You know why? Because they're so weak and afraid. They are weak and afraid of everything else, of every other country, of the other. They're so afraid. Oh my God, we need a wall. Okay, we need a wall. We need ice. We need weapons. ISIS is coming. They're coming after us, man. You realize that we bombed ISIS thousands of times, and in doing so, we've also bombed non-ISIS targets, weddings, funerals, innocent people. But no. We need to go and spend more on doing the same thing. Somehow, bombing people, creating more terrorism, or creating more terrorists by bombing innocent people alongside of ISIS, somehow they think that that's not going to create more terrorists. This whole thing is absolutely fucking ridiculous. Come on. Now, the White House officials also declined to answer a question about the president's priorities on other fiscal issues, including infrastructure and plans to pay for the wall. Again, I mentioned the wall. Because look, I got news for you. Mexico's not paying for that fucking wall. They're not. And you can't force another nation to pay for a wall. That's ridiculous. We're going to end up paying for the wall. And it's going to be useless anyway. You know why? There are things like tunnels and airplanes. The wall is absolutely useless. And that starts at $25 billion and ranges anywhere to up to $75 billion in spending. Not to mention, of course, you have to pay for the people that are going to be watching the wall. Ironically, the watchers on the wall. If you're a big Game of Thrones fan like I am, that would sound familiar. But in this case, we don't need that wall. We don't need more border enforcement. There are more people leaving the United States for Mexico than are coming in. It's absolutely, this whole thing is ridiculous. Now, the Post notes that defense spending accounts for almost the same proportion of the federal budget as all non-discretionary domestic spending, meaning that the Trump administration, their proposal would result in a roughly 10% across-the-board cut in other federal spending programs. Budgets for most federal agencies, as a result, would be reduced substantially, said an OMB official who spoke on the condition of anonymity. So basically, what that's saying is that since you have all of these cuts to go pay for the military, just for the military expansion, these federal programs would be harmed, would be very much impacted by these cuts. So, for example, you've got programs to help the poor and the middle class. Well, when it comes to them, well, fuck them, right? We need more bombs so we can swing our dick around the Middle East. As if we're not already doing that enough. You don't think Trump's going to start a war, by the way? Like anybody who thinks that, no, we voted for Trump because he's going to keep peace. He's going to keep peace in the Middle East. You think that's really going to happen? I really doubt it. The plans to go into to make the Syrians safe zones? How do you think you're going to do safe zones? Look, we criticized Hillary, rightly so, when she's like, well, we need a no-fly zone in Syria. What do you think creating Syrian safe zones is going to do? You got to enforce them somehow. Not good. Not good. And the stuff that they're doing with Iran, I mean, look, he's out there doing botched raids in Yemen, getting our people killed for no actionable intel. It wasn't the last raid, but the last, the one before, where one of the Navy SEAL Team 6 guy got killed. That raid went very, very poorly and ended up getting a lot of civilians in that area killed. So much so that Yemen's like, hey, you need to stop doing this. You need to stop doing these raids in our territory. We don't like this anymore. Okay, we're not okay with this. So, disaster. And look, he's also starting shit with other Middle Eastern nations. With the travel ban. And look, I'd be surprised. I'd be really surprised if the guy didn't bumble us into a disastrous war with Iran. Or, as I said, fuck shit up in Syria. Even more. And you know why, too? What do you think is going to boost his terrible approval ratings? I know it's all speculation, man. But what boosts a terrible president's approval ratings better than either a terrorist attack or a war? Or both? It worked with George W. Bush. He was incredibly unpopular, much more popular than Donald Trump in his first term. And then 2001, September 11th happened. And his approval rating shot up to 90%. Disaster. Now, there's one more thing. And look, on that, I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. I hope he does not bumble us into a war. But I'm just saying that I wouldn't be surprised. Now, one more piece about this upcoming budget. Now, he actually talked about infrastructure. Now, Trump said that the country faces an urgent infrastructure problem, which he promised he would fix with a $1 trillion spending plan. He said, quote, "We're going to make it easier for states to invest in infrastructure. We spent $6 trillion in the Middle East, and we have potholes all over our highways and our roads." He added, quote, "Infrastructure, we're going to start spending on infrastructure big." Look, I like the idea of infrastructure spending. Well, look, we do desperately need it. Okay, roads, bridges, pipes, they're falling apart. I mean, we've got water pipes like in Flint that need to be fixed, need to be replaced. All this aging infrastructure all over the country. Billions of dollars worth. Hey, you can create a lot of jobs from that. So look, if you're going to do an infrastructure plan, that's great. I love it. I will support it. And if he does so, and it actually works, great. I'll give him credit. However, what we've seen, what the shape that would take, might not be so good. In fact, Robert Reich broke it down. And look, what we know of his infrastructure spending plan might end up being more of a scam. Reich says that Trump wants to give rich developers and Wall Street investors tax credits to encourage them to fix roads and bridges. Basically, for every dollar that they put into a project, they would pay about 18 cents, according to this tax cut, and we would, or tax credit, and we would contribute the other 82% through our tax dollars. And since, of course, they are investing some in those roads and bridges, well, they're going to want a profit, right? Meaning toll roads, toll bridges. So not only would we end up paying once through our taxes, we would also pay the tolls and the user fees that go right into their pockets. Basically, this infrastructure plan would be a boondoggle. Not only that, but they would turn over some of our infrastructure to large investors. And if they do that, well, these large investors, they're going to look at what's most profitable to fix and set up toll roads. Stuff that's going to make them a healthy return on investment. Now, what that means is that they would ignore smaller airports, water pipes, and bridges and roads that won't make them a return on investment. So if there's a road that very few people or not a lot of people travel, that needs a lot of work, then they can look at that and go, well, even if we set up a toll road there or a toll booth, we're not going to get anything back from that. Not enough to justify how much it's going to cost to fix this road, so we're just going to leave that alone. That's not our job. We're not going to do this. So that's going to leave out a lot of places that actually need this infrastructure spending the most. Ironically, a lot of those places are places that voted for Donald Trump. This is rural America. Sure, they'll invest in places like California, New York, bigger cities, Chicago, all that stuff. In those places, it would make sense to put up a toll road because then they're going to make a lot of money off this. But it's going to leave these rural areas out. It's going to leave out small town Pennsylvania, small town Michigan. It's all about the money, man. So look, all these things taken together, and we don't know the full budget. They'll release the full details of it probably next week or in the coming weeks. And we don't know exactly what it's going to do, but some of the things that we've seen already coming out and their priorities they've talked about shows that this budget is going to be an absolute disaster. Giving more to the military and to the rich at the expense of working people. Look, if you thought Donald Trump was going to represent you and actually make America great again, he's not. He doesn't represent you, he represents himself and the 1%. Okay. Next story. More White House stuff. More White House leaks. These are fun. Let me just take a drink here. Now, the White House continues to be frustrated by leaks, and they are cracking down. Now, there's actually been a great report in Politico about their efforts to crack down on some of these leaks. Now, according to them, Sean Spicer has been going after the leaks and the leakers with increased security measures that include things like random phone checks of White House staffers overseen by White House attorneys. Now, you get this, attorneys. They're bringing in the lawyers. Why are they bringing in the lawyers? Well, Politico is going to explain, but first, we'll get to something else. According to the report, after Spicer became aware that information had been leaked out of a planned meeting with about a dozen of his communication staffers, he reconvened the group in his office to express his frustration over the number of private conversations and meetings that were showing up in unflattering news stories, including our own, according to sources in the room. Now, upon entering Spicer's office, for what one person briefed on the gathering described as, quote, an emergency meeting, staffers were told to dump their phones on the table for a phone check to prove they had nothing to hide. So here comes Spicer saying, I'm so pissed at these leaks. Give me your phones. Give me your phone. Give me your cell phone. I want to see if you're the leak. Are you the leak? Are you the leak? Maybe you're the leak. Give me your phone. Give me your phone. Can he actually do that? Well, that's what the lawyers are about. In fact, he was accompanied by a lot of lawyers to make sure that what he was doing was legit. Now, again, but why? They explained that Spicer, when he was asking for these phones, was citing something called the Presidential Records Act. Now, he explicitly warned that staffers using texting apps like Confide, an encrypted and screenshot-protected messaging app that automatically deletes texts after they are sent, and Signal, another encrypted messaging system, violated the Presidential Records Act. So basically, hey man, if you're using a government phone to send messages, well, that's part of the Presidential Records Act. You have to keep that. So, and if I see that on your phone, or if I see these programs on your phone, well, then you're the leaker. You're the leaker. And we know who it is. We're going to crack down. Now, there's a bit of a problem here. These phone checks included whatever electronic staffers were carrying when they were summoned to this unexpected meeting. This includes government-issued and personal cell phones. Now look, the Presidential Record Act, I don't know if it applies to government cell phones. It would make sense if it did. But personal cell phones? Ooh, that might be a little bit of a privacy issue. You can't just go and look through somebody's personal cell phone. That ain't right at all. Now, here's another fun irony about this story. Now, after Spicer's meeting, Politico notes, the State Department's legal office issued a 4-page memo warning about the danger of the leaks. And that memo was immediately leaked. Hey guys, don't leak this. Whatever you do, don't leak this memo. Oh shit, it just got leaked. Now it's in the Washington Post. Again, oops. That's hilarious. Now, the article also notes that Spicer is convinced these leaks are originating from the communications department. That's his department. That, of course, has led to a very tense environment. Politico notes that during meetings, the press secretaries repeatedly berated his aides, launching expletive-filled tirades in which he has accused them of disclosing sensitive information to reporters and saying that they've disappointed him. Well, that's one way to stop them from leaking information. Yell at them, and then tell them how disappointed you are in them after swearing at them. That's great. That's good. That's really going to help reduce the number of the leaks, Sean. Really. You know the Melissa McCarthy playing Sean Spicer? It gets more accurate every day. Flipping out on his own aides and his own staff. Jeez. Now, Politico says as word of the hunt has ripped through his office, talk has turned to question on whether or not firings are to come. In general, said one senior administration official, there's a lot of insecurity. No kidding. When they have to bring in the lawyers and they start checking your phones and they start yelling at you, yeah, of course there's going to be insecurity. Now, are people going to get fired? Likely. If they find somebody with that kind of environment, if they find somebody, well, it's not going to be good. And look, this is what happens, ironically, because look, we've talked about the way that Trump runs his White House before. How he's running this like not only a business, but an episode of Celebrity Apprentice, where everybody's in competition with each other. Everybody's trying to replace each other, usurp each other, one-up each other, to try and get somebody else's job. Well, this is sort of the atmosphere where everybody's at each other's throats. It's a perfect place to have leakers. They're not working as a team. They're not a well-oiled machine. No, they're constantly at each other's throats, according to these leaks. Of course, the White House is like, no. We are a well-oiled machine. We have no conflicts whatsoever. It's just a fake news media attacking us again. Then why are you getting so mad at the leaks if they're just fake? Oh, well, they make us look bad. But actually, things aren't working that way. That's not what the leaks are saying. Look, man, this is deeply, deeply dysfunctional. I can't believe the White House is running like this. It really is absolutely disastrous and amazing. This might be the most dysfunctional White House I have ever seen. I don't think, even if they find these leakers, I don't think it's going to get much better. We've got a disastrous 4 years ahead of us. Buckle up. Alright, so let's switch to something that's not Trump-related. And actually the rest of the show is not Trump-related, so let's talk about climate change. Let's talk about the climate change debate. Now, Tucker Carlson is going to have Bill Nye the Science Guy join him on his show to talk about climate change and climate denial. Carlson, of course, is going to say, "Well, I'm not a denier. I'm just a skeptic, man. That's all I am. We're just asking questions. All we're doing is we're asking questions. We're waiting for the science, because the science, I mean, it's not perfect. It's not perfect." And then, of course, in the beginning of one of his segments, he talks about how cognitive. He references how Bill Nye is talking about cognitive dissonance, and he's saying that, well, that's just name calling, man. We're why are you picking on us skeptics? So he's going to bring on Bill Nye, and they're going to have a conversation. And of course, this whole thing doesn't seem to sit well with Bill Nye. So let's take a look at that.
That doesn't sound like science to me, Bill Nye the Science Guy. That sounds like something very different.
So cognitive dissonance is not a delusion, it's a feature. It's human nature. So we in the science community are looking for an explanation why climate change deniers, or extreme skeptics, do not accept the overwhelming scientific evidence for climate change. And the most reasonable explanation is you have a worldview, and then you have evidence, and the evidence disagrees with your worldview, so you deny the evidence, And then along with that, you deny the authorities that are providing the evidence. Now, if you have a better hypothesis for why climate deniers deny the overwhelming scientific evidence, bring it on. It's not a delusion. It's just like the fox and the grapes.
Okay, so basically, this is sort of the problem with climate denial, as Nye points out. There is overwhelming evidence. Even ExxonMobil did its own studies back in the 1980s, and what they found was, oops, climate change is a real thing. And then later on, they're like, we need to shove that back in the box, because we don't want to lose our main source of income, which is drilling for fossil fuels. Hush, 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 let's keep it down. Let's keep it down. And see, that's where part of this comes from. These oil companies muddy the waters on science with their own fake studies created to contradict science because the science puts their business model in jeopardy. And so that's where some of this cognitive dissonance comes from. And that's where some of this confusion comes from. It's not that the science is wrong, it's that they're muddying the waters. Now, look, I'm going to get to Tucker Carlson because of course he had to respond to this. And he's going to continue to play the, well, I'm just asking questions card. So let's take a look at that.
Look, it's, people do come to every debate with preconceptions, and you're right about that, of course. But the essence of science is extreme skepticism. We always ought to be asking ourselves, is my hypothesis true?
I'm a member of those skeptic organizations, Mr. Carlson, and this is climate change denial is denial. The evidence is overwhelming. Don't get me wrong, I love you as a person more than life itself, but the evidence for climate change is overwhelming. So we are looking for an explanation of why you guys are having so much trouble with it.
So now, before the name calling begins, and before you try to end the conversation, let's start it by asking what exactly you mean. Now, I think most people are open to the idea that the climate is changing. It has always changed, by the way, as you know.
It's the rate, Mr. Carlson. It's the rate of such a concern.
The core question, from what I can tell, is why the change? Is it part of the endless cycle of climate change, or is human activity causing it? That seems to be the debate to me, and it seems an open question, not a settled question, to what degree human activity is causing that. Is that not an open question?
It's not an open question, it's a settled question. Human activity is causing climate change.
To what degree?
To a degree that it's a very serious problem in the next
No,
few decades.
wait, stop. Wait, no, you said it's a settled point, and I'm asking a very precise question.
It's a settled point.
Okay, then if you'll elucidate it for me, I'd be grateful. To what degree is climate change caused by human activities? 100% of climate change is caused by human activity? Is it 74.3%? It's settled science. Please tell us to what degree.
Okay, so look, again, Tucker Carlson muddying the waters. Okay, so look, here's what he's saying. Oh, okay, so sure, climate change is happening. It's always happened. So, because it's always happened, it's not necessarily all of humanity's fault. I mean, I'm just asking for the degree. I'm just asking questions, right? I'm just asking questions. Now, the whole thing, again, serves the question like, well, if we're not impacting the climate that much, if there's still questions, well, then it might be okay for us to continue to pump more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But see, that right there is denying what carbon actually does. See, what these greenhouse gases do is that they trap heat so that it cannot escape. Now, what happens when you trap heat and it can't escape? It tends to get warmer, right? That's what science is saying. That's very, very simple. Hence the name global warming. And also the effect of this heat changes the climate, i.e. climate change. It's really not a very difficult concept. And what we're doing is that we're putting more of these heat-trapping gases into the atmosphere. But again, Tucker Carlson is going to talk about the degree that these gases are having on the contribution to climate change. Well, look, it's pretty simple to find out the answer. You could just look at global temperature since the industrial age began, and you'll see that the rate of change has spiked significantly since humans started burning fossil fuels. Add in the population explosion, the industrialization of a lot of countries, that of course require more of this energy generation, which requires more burning of fossil fuels, and you're going to see this rate increase dramatically. And that's exactly what the models are showing. That's exactly what the data that we have found is showing. It may not be 100%, like 110% exact. It might be 97.5% exact. But that 3.5% or whatever that they want to point out, see, we don't know. We don't know how much humanity is actually contributing to climate change. We don't know. See, there's no consensus in the scientific community. Let's keep burning that fossil fuels. That's what they're doing. It's all about muddying the water. But again, Tucker Carlson, in this so-called debate, he's going to go back and he's going to keep asking the same simple question, the degree. And he's going to also interrupt every chance he gets to try and prevent Bill Nye from answering this question. Let's take a look at that.
So you asked how long it would be before, what would the climate would be like if humans weren't involved right now, is that right?
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. So at what point would it have changed? And I'm just saying, you don't actually know because it's unknowable.
This
so
is
why
how
aren't you
long
open
it takes
to
you to interrupt me, okay? It takes you quite a bit less than 6 seconds. So the climate would be like it was in 1750. And the economics would be that you could not grow wine-worthy grapes in Britain as you can today because the climate is changing. The use of pesticides in the Midwest would not be increasing because the parasites are showing up sooner or the pests are showing up sooner and hanging around longer.
I think that's probably all true, but you
would not be overwhelmed by pine bark beetles as it is. Right. Because of climate change. That's how
so much of this you don't know. You pretend that you know, but you don't know, and you bully people who ask you questions. I
really have to disagree with you. I spent a lot of time with this topic.
I'm open-minded. You are not, and we're out of time, unfortunately.
I'm open-minded, but you're not. And oh, look, we're out of time. Sorry. Constant interruptions. But look, this is what they're doing, right? This is muddying the water. And also, you have to look at the framing here. All I'm doing is just asking questions. I'm just a skeptic. In science, you're supposed to be skeptical. You know, and if you try to go after me with something that's established science, you're trying to bully me. Because I'm saying that I'm putting out the narrative that it is not established science. Because I have questions. Your questions can be answered. But again, he refuses to look at this data. And again, that's the narrative, right? I mean, think about it this way. I mean, you know, sky's blue, right? Well, what if somebody comes up and says, well, actually, what if it's purple? What if the sky is purple? No, it's not purple. You can see it. The sky's blue. Well, hey, whoa. I'm just asking questions, dude. Don't bully me. You don't actually know. You are a closed-minded bully. Just because you can't take my questions into account. Because your question is flawed. It's based on a flawed premise. And that's what this is turning into. And look, first they denied that it was happening in the first place, and there are many out there that still do deny that it actually is happening. And then when the effects come into play, they come up with, well, look, hey, you know what? This is natural. It's going to do that anyway. So, hey, look, it's not our fault. It's nothing that we're doing. We're just pumping all this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that is known to trap heat, but it's not our fault. We can't actually affect the climate. This is natural. It's all natural. No. The rate, which is what Nye was talking about, unmistakable. Like, you can't look at the hockey stick graph and think, wait a minute, something seems off here. You know, at the time where when humans started really burning this fossil fuels, this graph certainly starts to shoot up. It's a temperature graph. No, you know what? No. Fake. It's all fake. It's all broken. That's what they're going to say. And then they're going to blame it on things like volcanoes. Because again, look, if volcanoes were at fault, we would actually have data. We would see that there would be a massive enough spike whenever one went off. However, we don't. What we do see is a massive upward trend that is consistent. And that's the issue. And besides, the sum total of all CO2 outgassed by active volcanoes pretty much amounts to about 1/150th of all anthropogenic emissions. So you can't blame it on the volcanoes, okay? That's not science. Look, there's a lot of evidence out here, right? Don't take it from me. Look for yourselves. I'm certainly not a scientist. Bill Nye is an engineer. He's not necessarily a scientist either. But if you look at the data and you come at it with an open mind, you realize there's not a lot of room for question here. And look, stats aren't perfect, models aren't perfect, scientists don't always agree 100% on everything. But on this, you have a staggering 97% of scientists that agree that the rate that climate change is occurring now, not the fact that climate change is happening, everybody agrees on that, but the rate of climate change is being influenced by human activity. Mainly the burning of fossil fuels, like carbon and methane. And we've got to change that, or else we may create a world that we are not ready and prepared to adapt to. That's why this is a problem. That's why we need to do something about it. Alright. We got a couple more stories here for you guys. Including, we'll end on a good story. But first, an enraging story. An Idaho teen charged with sodomizing a disabled teammate has been sentenced with probation and community service. Now, last week, a high school football player named John R.K. Howard was sentenced to 3 years of probation and 300 hours of community service for kicking a coat hanger up a teammate's rectum. The victim, who was black and mentally disabled, said that this incident was the culmination of long-term bullying by both teammates and the coaches. Now, look, that act itself is incredibly horrendous. However, it's actually made worse by the fact that Howard denies doing anything wrong. Well, now wait a minute. Well, how can he be charged if he didn't actually admit to doing anything wrong? Well, he could do so by making what's known as an Alford plea. Now, that's essentially when a defendant makes a guilty plea, but doesn't actually admit that he's guilty. They maintain their innocence while recognizing the prosecution has enough evidence to achieve a conviction. Like, yeah, I know I kicked that thing up that guy's ass, but, I mean, I say that I didn't do it. I didn't do it. In this case, a rape charge was dropped in exchange for a lesser felony of injury to a child. Now again, this is a case where a man sodomized another man with a coat hanger, doing significant damage to the victim. However, the judge, Judge Randy J. Stoker, claimed that last week that his case was neither about racism nor sexual assault, despite the fact that it seemed to have been a sexual crime. He said, quote, "This is not a rape case. This is not a sex case. This started out as penetration with a foreign object. Whatever happened in that locker room was not sexual. It wasn't appropriate," he says. There's nothing in this record that supports anything close to the sexual allegation against this young man. In my view, this is not a case about racial bias. If I thought to you that Howard had committed this offense for racial purposes, he would go straight to the Idaho penitentiary. So, now, let me go into some of the racial allegations here. That's the judge. Let's go to the allegations. Now, the judge argued that the victim was nicknamed. He had a nickname, Fried Chicken. But he says, no, that's not racial. Yes, he's black, but his friends called him Fried Chicken because he loves to eat fried chicken. Really? So it's got nothing to do with the racial stereotype of black people liking fried chicken. Which, by the way, black people aren't the only ones who like fried chicken. I love fried chicken. You can probably tell. I eat a little too much. But, look, that stereotype makes no sense. But, again, here's this guy being nicknamed Fried Chicken. Not only that, but during the deposition, the victim claimed that Howard taught him a song that was pro-Ku Klux Klan and called him the N-word, as well as racially charged names like grape soda, watermelon, and Kool-Aid. But he said the coaches called him that too because they thought I liked it. Well, I'm pretty sure that he didn't. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Tell the coach, like, hey man, I really don't like that nickname. That's really probably not going to do a whole lot. Now, another thing here that was incredibly sickening is that after this happened, the family decided to file a lawsuit Because again, the coaches probably knew about this. At least they knew about the bullying, and also, according to the deposition, the coaches had been a part of it, calling him some of these racial names. Now, this lawsuit, of course, well, the school district does not like.
process through USAA is so effortless that you feel like you're a part of the family.
I love that I can pass a membership to my children and that they can be protected. We're the Williams family and we're USAA members for life.
And we've had people hurt, we've had people attacked. Yeah, that's going to happen at protests, but most of the protests, the majority of them, are peaceful. Look at the Women's March. No violence whatsoever, no issues whatsoever, and it was enormous. Some protests do get violent, and you know what? That's already illegal. The cops can already go after somebody for causing that violence if they can find them in the air. These bills are unnecessary. And unfortunately, a lot of places across the United States, a lot of states and a lot of cities, are now actually trying to pass, maybe not laws as draconian as this, but almost, in a way to shut down free speech. Speech that they do not like. And that's why it is deeply un-American to pass this sort of legislation. So, look, good on the Arizona House for stopping this. Good on everybody who called in, who tried, who left their elected officials voicemails and wrote letters. You guys are the heroes of the day. You guys helped save the First Amendment from this kind of horrific anti-American bill. You should be proud of yourselves. But there is a lot more fighting to go if we are to protect our most fundamental rights, the right to protest our government. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you today. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here. Big shout out to everybody who's watching the whole hour, who's liked and shared this video, and a huge shout out to the patrons, patreon.com/TYTNation, for helping to support our show to keep us on the air and independent. So thank you for supporting independent progressive media. From me here in Michigan, again, thank you to everybody for watching. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you all, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation.